Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I am your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by the other co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how are you today?
Thomas, I'm doing wonderful. Glad to be back recording with you. We missed last week due to Thanksgiving here in our fair cities and had some good time with family. So it was nice. I hope you guys did as well.
Yes, had lots of turkey, had 2 family celebrations to go to. Ate very, very well. It was everything you could expect, so it was good.
Excellent, excellent. Did you have any discussions around the family Thanksgiving table about estate planning?
I think I did, actually. Nothing personal, but generally because I'm an estate planning attorney, people talk about estate plans with me. So had a friend actually it's a sort of a relative of my brother that was there. And we kind of talked about his experience with him working at a bank and, kind of the drama that has gone on with some of the customers of the bank. So yeah, we've definitely got some discussion about estate planning there. How about you? Did you have any discussions about that?
Nothing specific other than, how's the practice of law going and
Yeah.
those kind of things. And it's always interesting because I don't know about you, but in my practice, there are sort of different ways people feel about talking about their estate plan. Some are really happy to do so, and some are a little less enthusiastic about discussing end of life kind of things. And just kind of always makes me think about that old quote of the two certain things in life are death and taxes. And, estate planning touches on both of those issues. And so it's fun that we do what we do, but sometimes it's not the, highlight of anybody else's conversation.
Right, right. You got to know who you're talking to for sure, whether you're going to bring it up. So,
That's right. Well, speaking of that, if you are looking at creating an estate plan, you had a great resource, I thought, on your blog this week about estate planning in 7 steps. And I thought it'd be good, kind of as a continuation of the discussion we had on the last episode about what it's like to sort of have that initial consultation with the law firm. What do you bring to the initial consult?
yeah. And actually, we did a lot of discussion in our last episode about a questionnaire and how to fill that out. And so that right there is the beginning point of creating an inventory of assets. That's step number 1. That will be helpful to the attorney to know what needs to be planned for. Or do we have a house? Do we have some IRAs? Do we have a brokerage account? Do we have, I don't know, a sports car or a classic car that needs to be planned for? Create an inventory of assets so that we can make sure that each one of those assets is covered in some way in your estate plan and through your discussions with the estate planning attorney. So that's number 1, create an inventory of assets. What is step number 2, Seth?
Well, can I ask you a question on that? Because I do get this situation with some degree of regularity is how small of an asset is too small of an asset to put on an inventory list?
Well, I wouldn't do every bowl and plate that you have in the house, but if you've got some tangible personal property that is important to you that you want to cover, a certain painting or a certain collectible, that should probably be part of the inventory list so that so that it will be prepared to communicate with the estate planning attorney. But it's really just a matter of sentimental value as opposed to the size. And I think every financial account, but whether that's if you got $50 in the bank or you've got 50,000, put it on the inventory so that it can be planned for, and the attorney will be able to tell you the implications of that asset.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation because I've had some clients who have come to me and say, well, we have this business over here, but it's not that big of a deal, so don't worry about it. And I'm thinking in my lawyer brain going, wait a minute, we have to address that, because if it's a business, that means there's other considerations to handle at the appropriate time. And or wait a minute, do we have a formality around this business, or is it a partnership? Is it a sole proprietorship? How do we make sure that we're accounting for all of those? And so it's definitely sort of that balancing act, if you will, of are we really needing to detail each fork in the silverware drawer?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Mm.
But on the continuum of things, if we get kind of into those categories or classes of things, like you said, the sentimental things, all the way up to, well, wait a minute, this thing may be actually generating revenue for you, even if it's not making any money or anything like that. We just need to know about that at that inventory list, so we can really get a good, realistic picture of what the total estate value is going to look like.
Right, right. And again, implications, whether that's an estate that's over $100,000 or under $100,000, that can kind of inform what kind of estate plan we'll recommend to you.
Yeah. And that's a really nice segue into the second point that you are listing here on your blog digest, is considering the family's needs after death. And that may be a scenario where there may not be a significant, in your mind, number of assets to transition between folks after your death, but there could be. And if you have everything planned, that can make that process a little bit easier for those who are coming behind. And I think some of the things here that you're thinking about, if there are sort of ongoing things for you, are, do you need or want to protect those funds in any particular way? Do you need to direct what happens with that asset as it moves down, either through maybe like a right of occupancy trust or a life estate or an educational fund for kids or grandkids, for example, and really just kind of thinking through what are the key considerations for what you want to have happen with that inventory that you created in step one.
Yeah, and another example of considering your beneficiary's needs after your death is setting up supplemental needs trusts or special needs trusts for an individual. In particular, for a surviving spouse who is on Medicaid, there needs to be a way to avoid the money going directly to that individual on Medicaid, so that Medicaid eligibility will be preserved, and then the assets will still be preserved. And you do that through a spouse's special needs trust. And, that's one of the needs that you need to think about. Do I have a spouse that is or potentially will be on Medicaid? And do I need to protect assets so that he or she doesn't lose them?
Yeah, and this can also involve, what about a second marriage or subsequent marriage situation where you have a blended family, where you're trying to think through, okay, well, I sort of have my assets from my family tree over here, but maybe now we're introducing another family tree into the situation. And how do we best and appropriately plan for that and make sure that everyone's considerations are taken into account and then handled appropriately?
Yes, absolutely. Step number.
So
yeah, go ahead. I'll. You want me to do it, or I'll do it?
You got it.
Step number 3 is select beneficiaries. And I always tell clients that you're in the best position to know who should be your beneficiaries. Sometimes clients will ask me, who should I name as a beneficiary? And I say, I'm hands off on that. I can't make that decision for you. Maybe I can help you consider some of the implications and how beneficiaries might feel. But that really is a decision that each client has to make. So it's better to have that done before you come down to the attorney's office than to, have that discussion with the attorney. Know who your beneficiaries are going to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there are times where the family or the individual that's coming in kind of say, don't really know who would be my beneficiaries. And some of those times what I like to do is kind of walk through what the rules would be if there was no plan in place. And okay, do we want the funds to go here or here? And that can sometimes jumpstart the discussion about, well, I didn't really want this individual to take. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but maybe over here. And or does it make sense to consider some charitable giving at that point, or planned and directed giving? And so lots of options there, but I'm like you, I can't make that determination or recommendation for you. That's really your desired outcome. And I think when you're talking about beneficiaries as well, it's one of those confusing terms somewhat, because a lot of accounts that you may have via an annuity or a life insurance policy or a retirement account or something like that has a designated beneficiary capability with it. And so we want to look at all of those types of accounts as well and understand how they relate to the overall distribution plan, and how they may not actually transpire how you want them to if you're putting funds in trust for the benefit of someone and you haven't designated that trust appropriately as a beneficiary of that fund. So a lot of things to think about there, which leads us on to number 4, which is how do you want your estate divided, and how do you kind of take those things into consideration?
Yeah. So typical thing that a lot of families do is everything to the spouse, and then if the spouse is predeceased, then everything to the children. But that may not be the situation that is your situation. So you could have a situation where the spouse is a second spouse and it's a blended family. And so you might, and you already referenced this, you got to kind of change up who gets what in that scenario. So, you kind of start with square one, everything to the spouse and then to the kids, but then you go from there and determine what would be a fair result. And, sometimes an unequal distribution is still a fair distribution. It might be that a child has, quit a job so that they could take care of mom or dad. And so maybe a fair decision is to provide a little bit more of a percentage to that individual in the estate. So there can be all kinds of situations, but that's one consideration there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other side of that I see on that fair but not equal outcome is, how do you do appropriate offsets? So if you sort of have a larger plan in place for what happens to your estate, but there may be specific assets that aren't easily divided into equal shares for whatever reason. How do you balance or equalize that? And that's something that we estate planning attorneys really like, because it's a fun puzzle to figure out and try to go through. And in theory, it sounds relatively simple, but in reality, and actually drafting it out in a way that's easy for whoever is going to be administering that piece of the estate plan to follow is something else. But really capturing what is the intent of how you want your estate divided, and that's really an important nuance that an experienced estate planning lawyer can help you with.
Absolutely.
And as you kind of walk through the rest of your list here, these are some of the like post signing, how do you store your documents? And then what do you do to continue updating your documents on a regular basis? And what do you recommend in terms of the update cycle on an estate plan?
Every 3 to 5 years, at least have it reviewed, have your estate plan reviewed. That's one consideration. But then also it can kind of go to just life events. So if there's a marriage, or if a new child has been born, or if a child has deceased, unfortunately, those are some of the big life events. Maybe a child has moved and they're not going to be available to serve as power of attorney very readily. So those are some of the situations that would cause an individual to update their estate plan. So those are some of my suggestions to folks.
I agree with that. One thing we do just internally for our office is we try to reach out to our clients on an annual basis after they've signed their plan. So, for example, if you sign in June of this year, we would reach out to you June of next year and just check in. Hey, do you have any questions for us? Are there any of those kind of life changes that you need to discuss? And it may be, nope, we don't have anything to worry about or address, and that's great. And then we kind of mark that as we followed up, and we'll follow up again on the next year. And again, with our storage concept is we try to check at that time if we need to continue maintaining electronic copies of their documents as well, because folks move out of state, they pass on, or different things may happen. And so we want to just have that touch point somewhat regularly with the clients, just to check in. And again, kind of with that idea of being their lifetime legacy lawyer. We're along life's journey with you, and we hope that we have a good enough relationship with the clients that we are one of the first thoughts of, hey, we're selling the house, or we're moving here, or something's happening. Maybe I should reach out to the estate planning lawyer and see if there's anything that needs to be done.
Absolutely. I think that's a great practice to have, to check in with clients from time to time. And then it looks like we covered store documents properly, update your estate plan on a regular basis. And then step number 7 is seek help from an experienced estate planning attorney. So just reach out, fill out one of those questionnaires, get an online appointment, all those good things. Get in touch with somebody that can really help you make sure that you're doing your estate plan properly.
That's right. Absolutely. And we're fortunate in Indiana to work with a lot of great lawyers who can serve those needs. And so wherever you happen to find yourself, that's a good thing to look at. And, I always kind of chuckle when I talk to my clients, because I've never had to go hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what that experience is like. I like to think we make it as easy as possible, and try to remove any barrier to entry to making that call, because it's already a little uncomfortable sort of thinking about those end of life decisions that need to be made, coupled with now I got to go talk to a lawyer. Now I got to potentially take time off work to go do that.
Yeah.
How do I fit that into my already busy schedule? So we try to make that as easy as possible. We talked about that on a recent episode here about how to actually get in touch with us. But Thomas, where do people go to find you if they want more information?
That's a great question. So you go to vicklaw.org. You can go there and book an online appointment or submit a contact us submission, and we'll get in touch with you. But vicklaw.org is where you can find me. How about you, Seth?
Well, we are here in the heart of Hamilton County, Indiana, and our website is noblesvilleattorney.com. And very similar to Thomas, there's a contact us section of the website. Fill that out, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you and see if we can be of help.
All right. Everybody have a good day.
Thanks, Thomas.